You know, some stories, they aren't just written down, they're practically burned into history with fire and sacrifice. We're going to talk about a man who didn't just have a name, he chose his name and then spent his whole life right up to his death proving he deserved it. This is the story of Chandrashekhar Azad.
All right, let's set the scene. It's a big public park in Allahabad. The date? February 27th, 1931. A man's meeting a friend under a tree. But they're not alone. The police are closing in, silently surrounding the park. Something big, something final is about to go down.
This quote, it's everything. It wasn't just some catchy slogan for him. It was his mission statement. I'll face the enemy's bullets, I have been free, and I will forever be free. Think about that. It's a promise, right? A promise to himself and to India that no matter what, he would never be captured. He would never lose his freedom.
So that begs the question, right? Who was this man? What could possibly lead someone to make a vow to never ever be taken alive? To get that, we've got to rewind. We need to go back and see how a young boy named Chandrashekhar Tiwari became the legend known simply as Azad.
So let's dive into the making of Azad, a boy's defiance. And what's wild is that his story as a revolutionary, it doesn't start on a battlefield. Nope. It starts in a courtroom, where a teenager's incredible nerve would change his life forever.
So he was born Chandrashekhar Tiwari back in 1906. By 1921, he's just 15 years old, a teenager, swept up in the huge wave of Mahatma Gandhi's non-cooperation movement. Like so many others, he jumps into the protests with everything he's got. And, well, he gets arrested for it pretty quickly.
Okay, so just try to picture this. He's only 15 years old, and he's hauled in front of a British magistrate, a figure of immense power. This one moment, this is where everything changes. It's the moment that forges who he will become. The magistrate asks him the first, most basic question, name. And he doesn't say Chandrashekhar Tiwari. He looks this symbol of colonial power right in the eye and says, Azad, which means the free. I mean, can you imagine the nerve? In that one word, a revolutionary is born.
So the magistrate, probably stunned, asks for his father's name. And does he back down? No way. He doubles down. He says his father's name is Swatantrata, independence. This wasn't just a kid being clever. He was literally saying, I was born from the idea of freedom itself.
And for the final question, where do you live? His answer? Jail. Just like that, with 3 short, unbelievably defiant answers, he completely redefines himself. He's basically saying, my old life is gone, my name is freedom, my father is independence, and my home is the struggle.
Well, as you can guess, the magistrate was furious. The sentence? 15 brutal lashes. But here's the thing. They thought this would break him, but it did the exact opposite. It made him a legend. Because with every single crack of the whip, this teenager shouted nationalist slogans. He turned his own torture into an act of protest.
All right, on to the next chapter, the revolutionaries' path from protest to armed struggle. So, a year later, in 1922, Gandhi calls off the non-cooperation movement. For a lot of young, fiery activists like Azad, this was a huge letdown. He felt that peaceful protest just wasn't cutting it. He decided that India needed complete independence, and he was willing to get it by any means necessary. So he hooks up with the Hindustan Republican Association, or HRA, a serious revolutionary group. They needed money for weapons, and that led to one of the most famous heists in Indian history, the Kakori train robbery of 1925. This was a super daring plan to steal government funds right off a moving train. And just like that, Azad wasn't just a protester anymore. He was now one of the most wanted men in British India.
Now, after a high-profile job like Kakori, the heat was on. The British launched a massive manhunt, and a lot of his friends and fellow revolutionaries were caught, some even executed. But Azad, he was like a ghost. He just vanished. He slipped through every single trap they set for him, which earned him the perfect nickname, Quicksilver. So how did he do it? Well, he became a true master of disguise. One day, he'd be a holy man, a sadhu. The next, a priest teaching kids in a village. He was a mechanic, a driver, even a laborer working on the docks in Bombay. He was literally hiding in plain sight, a phantom that the British just couldn't catch.
But here's the thing. Azad wasn't just some guy on the run. He was a thinker, a strategist. By 1928, he and the famous Bhagat Singh get together and decide to reorganize the HRA. They added one really important word, socialist. It became the HSRA. the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association. This was a huge deal. It meant they weren't just fighting to kick the British out. They were fighting for a whole new kind of India, one without class exploitation. For them, true freedom had to be for everyone, especially the poor.
And that brings us right back to where we started. A vow fulfilled, the final stand at Alfred Park. After a decade of running, hiding, fighting, and planning, it all comes down to this one day, this one confrontation.
So an informant tips off the police. The head of the CID, a guy named Notbauer, shows up with around 40 cops and they surround the park. Surrender? Not a chance. Azad immediately pulls his pistol. In the first few seconds of the shootout, he hits Notbauer in the wrist and another officer in the jaw. And get this, even completely outnumbered, his first move is to give cover fire so his comrade, Sukhdev Raj, can get away safely. Now he's alone, wounded, but he keeps fighting from behind a tree. He holds them off for half an hour. An incredible feat. But he's been shot. He's bleeding. He's running out of ammo. Finally, he checks his gun. There's just one bullet left. One bullet, and one last decision to make. And in that moment, that vow he made as a 15-year-old kid in that courtroom must have been echoing in his mind. He would never be captured alive. He raised the pistol and kept his promise. He died just as he had lived, completely and totally Azad, free.
But of course, a man like that doesn't really die, does he? The legacy, an unbreakable will. His final act wasn't an end. It was a spark. It lit a fire that cemented his legacy as a symbol of pure, unbreakable will.
And maybe his greatest legacy wasn't just his own bravery, but his role as a teacher and a mentor. As the commander and chief strategist of the HSRA, he was the guy who trained and inspired a whole new generation of revolutionaries, including, yes, the iconic Bhagat Singh. He literally shaped the direction of the entire armed struggle.
And you can actually see a piece of this history today. The very gun he used, his Colt pistol, the tool he used to fulfill his final vow, it's preserved. It's on display right now at the Allahabad Museum. It's just this silent, incredibly powerful symbol of what he was willing to sacrifice.
And that park, the place where he made his last stand, it's now named after him. Alfred Park is now officially Chandrashekhar Azad Park. The very ground where he fell is now a memorial, honoring that ultimate sacrifice.
So his name meant free, and his entire life was a fight for that very idea. It really makes you think, doesn't it? He chose a word and then lived his whole, short, intense life to become the very definition of it. It leaves us with a pretty big question. What does it really mean to be truly Azad?